Hello, continuing our discussion of military retired pay and the pitfalls and issues to know in that regard. I want to take some time to have a somewhat broad discussion about the concept of active duty versus reserve service in the context of military retired pay. So the retired pay ultimately will be a certain amount of money that the service member receives upon his or her retirement. But the question is, how do you calculate, or more accurately, how does the military calculate that monthly amount? So that is based on several factors, one of them being how the service member was considered during his or her service. And service members can change from time to time from active duty to reserve duty. And we'll talk about that in a subsequent blog, how to address those issues. But in general, the concept of being active duty means that you are, active the entire year, and your seniority or your military pay, retired pay, is calculated based on the number of years of service. That's for active duty members. For reservists who are not serving in the military on a daily basis, they may be doing service only when called up or mobilized, or some typical weekend drills, etc. They receive what is called points. And you receive points for a variety of reasons as a reservist, including the time spent on performing drills or during mobilization, etc. So those are two very different regimes for calculating the military retired pay. And again, there's the concept of a mixed regime where a service member who perhaps started out in the reserves has built up a certain number of points during that time, and then becomes active duty and starts calculating through a time-based formula for their military retired pay. At some point, the reserve points are added up and created or modified, into a time formula. So for example, if you have, as a reservist, accumulated 360 points, then that will give you roughly an additional year of service. This is vital information for both spouses to know when dividing military retired pay. And one of the reasons for this is because DFAS must have the correct qualified domestic relations order to divide the military retired pay, referencing the correct retirement regime, whether it's active duty, time-based, or reservist, point-based, in order to properly calculate the amount of retired pay to be divided between the former spouses. If the retirement regime is not correctly indicated, or if there's inconsistencies in the draft document, DFAS is going to reject it and send it back to the spouses or their lawyers to revise. And again, as I've said many times, this may only happen years after the divorce and can be very hard to recreate. Another problem here is that at the time of divorce, both spouses want to know and have a right to know at least an estimate of what he or she may receive upon the service member's retirement. And in order to correctly understand that, the determination must be made of what type of retirement the service member is going to have, or whether it be active duty or through a reserve retired pay. So the divorce order and the qualified domestic relations order coming after the divorce that actually divides the retired pay must be crystal clear on the type of retirement process, how the retirement benefit for each spouse is calculated, and usually because of the various duties of service members, sometimes active, sometimes reserve, these orders can be drafted in the alternative. And in fact, I recommend that most, if not all, qualified domestic relations orders for military retired pay be drafted in the alternative, indicating if the service member retires active duty, this is what the benefit will be for the spouses. If the service member retires reserve based on points, this is what the benefit will be for each spouse. That's the clearest way to do it, while the issue at the time of divorce is clear and in the front of everybody's mind. Unfortunately, there's countless orders that I am asked, years after the fact to try to unravel, modify, or quote fix, and we can do it. I'm absolutely happy to work with you, but it can be pretty difficult, and this kind of issue really can be best addressed by understanding the two different types of service and means of calculating the retired pay.